Hey guys, welcome aboard to Just Sleep Stories. Tonight, you're checking into the most questionable accommodation in all of human history, a medieval inn. Not the cozy fireplace, soft bed, 5-star review kind. I mean the real thing, the kind where the bed might already be occupied by something that is not paying rent, the kind where the soup has seen things, terrible things, and the floor. Well, let's just say it has layers of history that nobody asked for. So before you settle into your completely lice-free modern bed, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this kind of slow, questionable time travel. And if you feel like it, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. Somehow, medieval inns feel like it's always 3 in the morning. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, get comfortable, and gently prepare yourself for a night that will make you deeply grateful for basic plumbing. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what it actually felt like to stay in a medieval inn? Not visit, survive. What did the bed smell like? Did anyone ever wash the sheets? Or were they just seasoned? What exactly was in the stew? And did anyone ask questions before eating it? Could you sleep while sharing a room with strangers, animals, and possibly someone loudly snoring like a broken bellows? What would you do if a rat casually introduced itself at your feet? Would you last a full night? Or would you politely fake your own disappearance before breakfast? And now, congratulations, you've just arrived in the year 1347. You're tired, dusty, slightly confused, and standing in front of a medieval inn that looks like it might collapse if you breathe too confidently. Good luck. You stand outside the inn, staring at a crooked wooden sign swinging gently in the wind, its faded paint suggesting something cheerful like the Golden Goose or the King's Rest, though neither gold nor rest seem particularly likely. The building leans slightly to one side, as if reconsidering its life choices, and a faint glow spills from the windows, accompanied by the low murmur of voices, clattering cups, and the unmistakable smell of smoke, damp wood, and something vaguely edible. You pause for a moment, because this is it. This is where you will be sleeping, or at least attempting to. The wind nudges the sign again, producing a slow, tired creak, like the building itself is sighing. You notice the wood is cracked, the paint chipped, and the goose, if that is indeed a goose, looks less majestic and more like it has also had a very long day. Still, it's warm inside, and you are not. Your boots are coated in dust, your back aches in ways you didn't know were possible, and the idea of lying down anywhere, even somewhere mildly questionable, feels like a luxury. You take a step closer. The ground beneath you is uneven, a mix of packed earth and scattered straw that has seen better centuries. Somewhere nearby, a horse shifts in place, snorting softly, while a cartwheel creaks as if it's remembering happier times. You glance at the door, thick wood, iron hinges, slightly warped. The kind of door that has been opened thousands of times by people just as tired as you, and probably just as hopeful. And that's the strange thing. Hope. Despite everything about this place suggesting otherwise, there's still that small, persistent voice in your head saying, maybe it won't be that bad. Maybe the bed is clean. Maybe the food is fresh. Maybe tonight is peaceful. You already know the answer, but you open the door anyway. Because in the medieval world, options are not exactly abundant. And besides, it's either this or sleeping outside with whatever is currently watching you from the darkness. So really, when you think about it, this place is starting to look pretty good. You push open the heavy wooden door and immediately your senses are overwhelmed by a thick wave of warmth, noise and layered scents that seem to have been collecting here for decades. Smoke from the hearth clings to everything, mixing with the sharp tang of ale, the earthy presence of unwashed travellers, and a stew that smells both inviting and suspiciously mysterious. The door shuts behind you with a dull thud, and just like that, you are inside. The air is warmer, yes, but also heavier. It wraps around you like a thick blanket you did not ask for. You take a breath and immediately reconsider that decision. Because this is not just one smell, this is history. Layers of it. There's the constant smoke from the fire, which seems to have permanently settled into the walls, the ceiling, and possibly the very concept of the room itself. It's sharp, slightly bitter, and ever-present. Then there's the ale. Sour, yeasty, faintly sweet. Spilled, wiped, spilled again. It clings to the tables, the floor, and the general atmosphere like a loyal companion that refuses to leave. And then, the people, dozens of them, each carrying their own unique contribution to the collective scent of the room. You don't focus on it. You learn very quickly not to. Instead, you let your senses adjust. Because beneath all of this, somehow, there is food. That bubbling pot over the fire releases a steady, comforting aroma that cuts through everything else. It's rich, warm, and just appealing enough to convince you that eating here might not be a terrible idea. Might. The soundscape is just as overwhelming. Voices overlap in a constant hum, punctuated by bursts of laughter, the scrape of wooden benches and the occasional sharp clatter of a mug meeting a table with more enthusiasm than necessary. You stand there for a moment just inside the doorway, letting it all wash over you, because this is not just an inn, this is a world, contained in one smoky room, and now you are part of it. Behind a sturdy wooden counter stands the innkeeper, a figure who seems to have mastered the art of judging people in a single glance. With a nod that is both welcoming and slightly calculating, they assess your clothing, your posture, and most importantly your ability to pay, all while casually wiping a mug with a cloth that may or may not improve its cleanliness. You approach slowly, not because you're nervous, but because you understand instinctively that this person already knows more about you than you do. The innkeeper's eyes flick over you with quiet efficiency. Boots, clothes, posture, the way you hold yourself. It's not rude, it's not even obvious, but it is thorough. You suddenly feel like a walking summary of your financial situation. The cloth continues its slow journey around the mug. You're not entirely sure if it's cleaning it, or just moving things around. Still, the innkeeper gives a small nod. Acknowledgement, acceptance. You exist. That's enough for now. There's something steady about them, unshaken. While the rest of the room hums with movement and noise, the innkeeper remains calm, grounded, like the centre of a spinning wheel. People come and go, coins change hands, voices rise and fall, and through it all they simply manage. You realise something important. This place does not function without them. They know who owes what, who's staying the night, who might cause trouble, and who probably already has. You open your mouth to speak, but before you can say anything, they gesture slightly. A small motion. Efficient. You're expected to state your business, clearly, quickly, because time here is not wasted. You ask for food, a place to sleep, basic survival. They nod again, still wiping that same mug. You wonder if it's the same mug from earlier. You suspect it might be. A few coins change hands, and just like that, you have secured your place in this carefully balanced ecosystem. No paperwork, no confirmation, just trust. And the quiet understanding that if anything goes wrong, the innkeeper will know. You step further inside into the common room, where life unfolds in a constant hum of activity. Travellers sit shoulder to shoulder at long wooden tables, voices rising and falling like waves, punctuated by bursts of laughter, arguments over nothing, and the rhythmic thud of mugs meeting wood with surprising enthusiasm. You find a place along one of the benches, not because it's comfortable, but because it exists, and in this moment that is enough. Around you the room moves as one, not in silence, but in rhythm. Conversations overlap, weaving together into something almost musical. You catch fragments, stories of the long roads, bad weather, worse decisions, none of them complete, all of them somehow connected. A laugh erupts from somewhere to your left, loud, unrestrained. The kind of laugh that comes from someone who has decided, at least for tonight, that everything is fine. Across the table, two travellers debate something with quiet intensity. You don't know what it is. You don't need to. The point is not the argument. The point is the act of having it. A mug slams down, another follows. There's a rhythm to it. Wood, liquid, voices. Repeat. The benches creak under shifting weight. Boots scrape against the floor. Somewhere behind you, someone starts a story that immediately captures attention, drawing in listeners like a fire draws warmth. You realize something subtle. No one here is alone, even if they arrived that way. The inn dissolves that. It pulls people together, whether they intend it or not. You adjust your position slightly. The bench responds with the sound that suggests it has opinions about this. You ignore it. Because this is not about comfort. This is about presence. Being here, in this moment, part of the noise, part of the rhythm, part of the strange shared experience of simply existing in a place where everyone is tired and no one is pretending otherwise. At the centre of it all burns the hearth, a large open fire that serves as the inn's kitchen, heater, light source, and occasional hazard. Sparks drift lazily upward, smoke curls along the ceiling, and a large pot hangs over the flames, bubbling away with a determination that suggests it has been cooking continuously since last Tuesday. You find yourself drawn to it, not just for warmth, but for reassurance, because the fire is reliable. It does not judge, it does not negotiate, it simply burns. Steady, constant. The heat reaches you first, easing the chill from your clothes, your hands, your bones. It's uneven, strong on one side, fading quickly on the other, but it's enough. More than enough. The light flickers across the room, casting long shadows that stretch and shift with every movement. Faces appear, disappear, reappear again, shaped by flame and smoke into something almost theatrical. You watch the pot, because everyone watches the pot. It bubbles quietly, occasionally releasing a soft hiss, as if reminding you that it is very much alive. The contents move slowly, thick and heavy, stirred occasionally by someone who seems to know exactly what they're doing, or at least confident enough to pretend. You notice how everything revolves around this fire. Food is made here, warmth is found here, light comes from here, and occasionally things go slightly wrong here. A spark jumps, someone reacts. A quick movement, a muttered word. Then everything settles again. Normal. This is the centre of the inn, not the counter, not the tables. This. The fire is what holds everything together, and as you stand there, feeling its warmth, watching its steady rhythm, you realize something simple. As long as the fire burns, this place survives. And tonight, so do you. It is time to eat, which in a medieval inn means accepting a wooden bowl of stew without asking too many questions. The contents are hearty, warm, and deeply ambiguous, with chunks of something that could be meat or could simply be very confident vegetables, all swimming in a broth that tastes like survival. The bowl is placed in front of you with quiet finality. No explanation, no ingredients list, no reassurance, just stew. You stare at it for a moment. Steam rises slowly, curling into the already smoky air, carrying with it a smell that is undeniably rich, faintly savoury, and just mysterious enough to make your brain start asking questions it shouldn't. So you make a decision. You will not ask, because asking implies answers, and answers might ruin everything. You pick up the spoon. It's wooden, slightly worn, possibly older than you. You dip it into the stew, feeling resistance, not unpleasant, just substantial. This is not a delicate meal. This is something that exists to keep you alive, and it takes that responsibility very seriously. The first bite is hot, warmer than expected, comforting even. There's salt. There's depth. There's something earthy, something slow-cooked, something that has been simmering long enough to forget what it originally was. You chew thoughtfully. The texture changes halfway through. You pause. Was that meat? It could be meat. It probably is meat. You decide it is meat. And with that decision, you continue. Around you, no one questions their food. Bowls are lifted. Spoons move steadily. Conversations continue uninterrupted. This is not a place for culinary curiosity. This is a place for acceptance. You notice something else. The stew never really stops. The pot at the fire is constantly bubbling, constantly being stirred, constantly receiving new additions. A handful of something here, a scrap of something there. It evolves, adapts, survives, much like the people eating it. You take another spoonful. This one has a different texture. You do not dwell on it, because here food is not about certainty. It is about warmth. It is about fullness. It is about making it through the night without your stomach staging a rebellion. And surprisingly, it works. You feel it spreading through you, a quiet comfort replacing the sharp edge of hunger. Your shoulders relax. Your breathing slows. You are, for the first time since arriving, satisfied, and you finish the bowl, not because you are brave, but because you are tired, and because in this moment this uncertain, ever-changing stew is exactly what you need. Even if you're not entirely sure what it was. Alongside your stew comes bread, dense and firm, with a crust that requires both commitment and possibly a small negotiation to bite through. It is the kind of bread that reminds you of your own strength, or lack thereof, as you attempt to chew with dignity while wondering if your jaw will file a formal complaint. The bread arrives without ceremony, a thick, uneven chunk placed beside your bowl like a quiet challenge. You pick it up. It has weight, not metaphorical weight, actual weight. This is not bread that floats lightly into your life. This is bread that lands with purpose and stays there. You press it slightly. It does not yield at all. You consider your options. You could tear it. You try. It resists. You try again, this time with more determination, bracing one hand against the table as if preparing for a small but meaningful battle. Eventually, it gives, not gracefully, but enough. You bring it to your mouth. The first bite requires commitment. There is no casual nibbling here. This is a decision, a moment where you and the bread must come to an agreement about how this relationship's going to work. You bite down and immediately understand. This bread is not here to entertain you. It is here to test you. The crust pushes back, firm and unapologetic, while the inside reveals a dense, slightly chewy texture that demands your full attention. You chew slowly, very slowly. Your jaw adjusts. Your expectations adjust. This is not soft, airy, melt-in-your-mouth bread. This is survival bread. Bread that was baked to last. Bread that could probably survive a small accident and remain structurally intact. And yet, there is something satisfying about it. A rhythm. Bite, chew, pause, repeat. You dip a piece into the stew. Now it makes sense. The bread softens slightly, absorbing the broth, becoming less of an opponent and more of a companion. A partnership is formed. You take another bite. Better, still firm, but cooperative. You glance around. Everyone else is doing the same. No one struggles, no one complains. Because this is normal. This is what bread is supposed to be. Reliable, durable, unlikely to betray you. You finish your portion slowly, aware that this meal is not meant to be rushed. It's meant to last, to sustain, to remind you that food here is not about pleasure. It's about endurance. And as you set the final piece down, jaw slightly tired but spirit intact, you realize something quietly profound. You did not defeat the bread, you adapted to it, and in a medieval inn, that's considered a win. You're handed a mug of ale, cloudy and warm, but strangely comforting. It is less about taste and more about reassurance, a liquid reminder that whatever is happening around you, it can probably be improved slightly by drinking enough of this. The mug is placed in your hand with confidence, as if this is the solution to everything. And in a way, it is. You lift it carefully. The liquid inside shifts slowly, slightly opaque, catching the firelight in a way that suggests clarity is not part of its personality. You take a cautious sip. It's warm, not unpleasant, just unexpected. There's a softness to it, a mild bitterness balanced by something faintly sweet, something that doesn't demand your attention but quietly earns it. You take another sip. Better this time, more familiar. You realize quickly that this is not a drink you analyze, this is a drink you accept. Around you, mugs are raised, lowered, refilled. Ale moves through the room like a shared language. It smooths conversations, softens edges, turns strangers into something slightly closer to companions. You feel it working, not dramatically, not instantly, but gradually. The tension in your shoulders eases. The noise of the room becomes less overwhelming, more rhythmic, almost comforting. You take another sip, and then another, because this is what you do. Not because you're thirsty, but because it feels right. You notice how people linger over it, how they hold their mugs as they speak, as they listen, as they exist within this space. It's not just a drink, it's a pause, a moment, a small steady reassurance that whatever the day has been, this is better. You don't think about where it came from. You don't think about how it was made, because those thoughts lead to places that are not helpful right now. Instead, you focus on the warmth, the familiarity, the quiet comfort of something that has been shared by countless others before you. You finish the mug, and for a brief moment, everything feels manageable, not perfect, not ideal, but manageable. And in this place, in this time, that is more than enough. As the evening continues, you begin to notice that the people around you are not just fellow diners, but likely your future sleeping companions. In a medieval inn, privacy is a luxury no one expects, and the concept of personal space is treated more like a suggestion than a rule. It begins slowly, a realization, subtle at first, the way people settle in, the way no one leaves, the way the benches fill and then stay filled. You glance around. These are not just passing faces, these are your people for the night, whether you chose them or not. You watch as conversations shift from polite to familiar, from cautious to open. Stories are shared, laughter becomes easier, and the invisible lines between individuals begin to blur. Because here, there is no distance, no separation, no your space and my space. There is only space, and everyone is in it. You notice a man across from you removing his boots with a quiet sigh of relief. Another leans back, stretching, already preparing for sleep, as if the transition from conversation to unconsciousness is simply a matter of timing. Someone else yawns, wide, unapologetic. You realize something important. This is not a place where you retreat into solitude. This is a place where you exist together, whether you like it or not. You adjust your position slightly. Someone shifts to accommodate you, not out of politeness, but out of necessity. Because if they don't, you will both notice. You begin to understand the unspoken agreement. No one asks for privacy, because no one expects it. Instead, there's a quiet acceptance, a shared understanding that tonight you are all part of the same small, crowded world. You will sleep near each other, breathe the same air, hear the same sounds, and in the morning you will all wake up and leave, perhaps without even saying goodbye. You take a final sip of ale, look around one more time and accept your fate. These strangers are now your roommates. You glance down at the floor, a patchwork of straw, dirt and history that crunches softly underfoot. Each step releases a faint scent and a reminder that this surface has witnessed countless nights just like this one, none of them particularly clean. You shift your foot slightly, there's a soft crunch, not alarming, just noticeable. You look down. The floor is not a floor in the way you understand it. It's a collection. Layers of straw, pressed flat over time, mixed with dirt, fragments of things that once were something else, and the general accumulation of daily life. You take another step. Same sound, consistent, reliable. You begin to notice patterns. Darker patches where liquid has been absorbed and forgotten, lighter areas where fresh straw has been scattered, an attempt at renewal that is more symbolic than effective. You realize something slowly. This floor is not cleaned, it is maintained, in a very loose sense of the word. New straw is added, old straw is still there. Everything blends, everything becomes part of the whole. You shift again. A faint scent rises. You decide not to identify it, because identification leads to understanding, and understanding leads to regret. Instead, you accept it, because everyone else has. People walk across it without hesitation, sit near it, exist alongside it, because it is simply part of the environment. You glance around. No one is concerned, no one is even noticing, because this is normal. This is what a floor is supposed to be. You take a careful step, then another, adjusting your expectations with each movement, because here, the ground beneath you is not just something you stand on. It is something that remembers every step, every spill, every night. And as you settle into your place within this room, you realize one simple truth. This floor has seen worse than you, and it will see worse again. And somehow, that makes you feel slightly better. Eventually you approach the innkeeper again to secure a place to sleep, entering into a quiet negotiation that feels less like booking a room and more like bargaining for survival. Prices vary depending on what you want, though what you get may not always match what you imagined. You return to the counter, not with confidence, but with acceptance. Because at some point the question is no longer whether you will sleep here, but where. The innkeeper looks up, already aware of your intentions. Of course they are. They've been watching the room, tracking who eats, who drinks, who lingers just a little too long. You're not a mystery. You're a transaction waiting to happen. You clear your throat slightly. Ask as politely as you can for a place to sleep. There's no dramatic pause, no theatrical response, just a simple nod. Then comes the question. Not if you want a bed. but how much of a bed you can afford. Because in this world, comfort is adjustable. For a few coins, you might get a space on a shared mattress. For a few more, perhaps something closer to a corner. For even more, a rare luxury space that belongs almost entirely to you. Almost. You consider your options carefully. Because your body wants rest, but your instincts suggest caution. You hand over the coins, not too many, not too few. Just enough to suggest you value sleep, but not enough to suggest you're wealthy. The innkeeper takes them without comment. Efficient. Final. A decision has been made. You're assigned a place, not a room, not a bed in the way you imagine it, but a location, a position within the larger arrangement of sleeping bodies. You're given a brief gesture, a direction. No explanation needed. You understand. Because this is not about luxury. This is about inclusion. You now belong to the night. And for the first time since arriving, you know where you will be. You're led to a sleeping area where beds are arranged in close proximity, often shared with other travellers. The mattress is soft in places, firm in others, and possibly alive in ways you would rather not confirm, while the blanket carries the unmistakable warmth of previous guests. You step into the sleeping space, and immediately realize that this is not a room. This is a collection of intentions. Beds line the walls, arranged with practicality rather than comfort in mind. Some are wide, some are narrow, and most are already occupied in ways that suggest flexibility is required. You're shown your place, a section of mattress, not the whole thing, just enough. You sit down carefully. The surface responds, uneven, soft here, firm there, as if multiple histories have settled into the same space, leaving behind a topography of previous sleepers. You shift slightly, adjusting, finding the least surprising position. The blanket is handed to you. You hesitate, not because it's unwelcome, but because it clearly has a past, a long one. Still, warmth is warmth. You accept it. Around you, others are already settling in. Some lie down immediately, surrendering to exhaustion without hesitation. Others adjust, reposition, negotiate space with silent movements that speak of experience. You follow their lead, lie back carefully. There's a moment, a pause, where your body registers everything at once. The closeness, the unfamiliar textures, the presence of others. You can hear breathing, different rhythms, different depths. Someone shifts beside you, not aggressively, just existing. You realize something quietly profound. This is not your space, it is shared space, and that changes everything. You cannot stretch freely. You cannot move without consideration. You're part of a system now, a delicate balance of bodies, all trying to rest without disturbing one another too much. You pull the blanket closer, close your eyes, and begin the slow process of convincing yourself that this is fine. As night settles in, the room fills with the sounds of sleep, a chorus of snores, murmurs, and shifting bodies that create a rhythm all their own. It is less like resting in silence, and more like attending an overnight concert performed by people who have no idea they are participating. It starts with one, a low steady sound from somewhere across the room, barely noticeable at first. Then another joins, slightly higher, less consistent. Then a third, a sharp inhale followed by a long dramatic release, and suddenly you are surrounded. Snoring fills the space, rising and falling in overlapping patterns, each person contributing their own unique interpretation of what sleep should sound like. You lie still, listening, because there is no escaping it. This is not noise, this is the environment. You try to find a rhythm, a pattern you can follow, something predictable, but it shifts constantly. One stops, another begins. Someone coughs. Someone mutters something unintelligible. You adjust your position slightly. The mattress responds. The person beside you shifts in return. The symphony continues. You consider covering your ears, but that only amplifies your own breathing, which somehow feels louder than everything else. So you stop. You listen, and slowly, you begin to adapt. The sounds blend together, lose their edges, become something less intrusive, more consistent, like waves, or wind, or distant thunder that never quite arrives. Your body starts to relax, not because the noise has stopped, but because you have stopped resisting it. You're no longer trying to sleep despite the sounds. You're sleeping within them, and that changes everything. The symphony continues, but now it carries you. As you lie still, you begin to notice subtle movements, tiny sensations that suggest you're not alone in your sleeping arrangement. Medieval inns are famous for their smaller residents, and while they may not introduce themselves, they are certainly present. At first it's nothing, just a faint sensation, easily ignored. You shift slightly, it stops. You settle again, then there it is, again, subtle, almost polite. You pause, because your mind has already reached a conclusion your body would rather not confirm. You tell yourself it's nothing. Fabric, movement, air, anything but what it might be. You remain still, very still, as if movement will only encourage things. Around you, the room continues its steady rhythm, snoring, breathing, shifting. No one reacts. No one seems concerned, which tells you everything you need to know. This is normal. You adjust the blanket slightly, creating a barrier, a small symbolic defense. It helps, mentally, if not physically. You focus on your breathing, slow, even, controlled, because panic is not helpful, and curiosity is even less helpful. You choose ignorance, deliberate, strategic. You will not investigate, you will not confirm, you will simply exist. And eventually, the sensations fade into the background, not gone, just accepted, like everything else here. And in that quiet acceptance, sleep begins to find you. Just as you begin to drift off, the inn reminds you that sleep is never guaranteed. A late arrival bursts through the door, someone stumbles, another argues, and somewhere in the distance, something crashes in a way that feels both dramatic and completely normal. You're almost asleep. Almost. Your body has finally settled. Your mind has slowed. The rhythm of the room has carried you to the edge of rest. And then the door bursts open, sound floods in, cold air, voices loud, unfiltered. Someone laughs, someone else protests. Boots hit the floor with unnecessary enthusiasm. You open your eyes slightly, not fully, just enough to confirm that yes, something is happening, and no, it will not be quiet. The newcomers move through the space with the confidence of people who have done this before. Because they have. They speak loudly, because that's what you do here. There is no concept of others are sleeping. There is only arrival. A mug is knocked over, liquid spreads, someone reacts, another laughs. You hear footsteps approaching, closer, then passing. The disturbance moves through the room like a wave, rising, peaking, then slowly fading. Voices soften, movement slow. The door closes again, and just like that, the inn returns to its nighttime rhythm. You lie still, eyes closed once more, waiting, listening, making sure it's over. And when the silence, well, the relative silence, settles back in, you exhale. Because here, sleep is not a guarantee, it is something you earn. One interruption at a time, you wake intermittently, adjusting to the unfamiliar environment, listening to the sounds of breathing, shifting, and the occasional whisper of movement. It is a night spent half asleep, half alert, as your mind quietly questions every sound. Sleep does not come all at once. It arrives in pieces, fragments, short stretches where you drift just far enough to forget where you are, only to return moments later, pulled back by a sound, a shift, a thought you didn't invite. You open your eyes slightly. The room is dim now, lit only by the dying glow of the fire in the next room and the faintest hints of moonlight slipping through small, uneven gaps in the walls. Shadows move, not dramatically, just enough to remind you that this place is never completely still. You listen, because listening feels safer than sleeping, or there's breathing, close, not yours, steady, deep. Someone nearby shifts the mattress, responding with a soft protest. Another person coughs quietly, then settles again. You close your eyes, try to return, but your mind has already begun its work. Every sound becomes a question, every movement a possibility. Is that someone turning over, or someone getting up? Is that the wind, or something else? You pull the blanket slightly closer, not because you're cold, but because it feels like control, even if it isn't. You drift again, this time deeper, but not completely, because part of you remains alert, a quiet watchfulness that refuses to fully disappear. You're aware of your surroundings in a way you never are in your own bed. Every unfamiliar detail, every shared breath, every reminder that this space is not yours. Time stretches. You lose track of how long you've been like this. Minutes, hours, both feel the same. Eventually your body begins to accept it. This is not perfect rest, but it is rest. A different kind. One that exists alongside awareness instead of replacing it. And slowly, the unease softens, not gone, just quieter, managed, like everything else in this place. And in that fragile balance, you continue, half asleep, half awake, exactly where you need to be. Morning does not arrive gently. It comes with noise, movement, and the unmistakable sense that everyone wakes up at once. There is no quiet transition, only the sudden return of voices, footsteps, and the daily ritual of beginning again. You don't wake up. You are woken, suddenly, without warning. The room shifts from stillness to movement in what feels like a single moment. Someone sits up, someone else stands, fabric rustles, wood creaks. Voices return, not loud at first, but enough to end the night. You open your eyes. There is no soft, gradual transition, no peaceful silence, just morning, immediate, unavoidable. Light filters in through the small openings, thin and pale, stretching across the room in uneven lines. It reveals everything you had carefully ignored during the night. The space, the closeness, the reality of where you are. People move around you, not quietly, not carelessly, just normally. Because this is how mornings work here. There is no concept of easing into the day. The day simply begins. Someone steps past you, close, too close, but no one reacts. Because this is expected. You sit up slowly. Your body protests. Not dramatically. Just enough to remind you that rest was partial. You stretch slightly, carefully. Because space is still limited. Around you, others are already preparing to leave. Boots are pulled on. Belts tightened. Small belongings gathered with practiced efficiency. There are no long goodbyes, no lingering conversations, just movement, purpose, continuation. You realize something quietly. The night did not belong to you, and neither does the morning. This place is shared, always. You stand, adjust your clothing, take one last look at the space where you slept, not with nostalgia, but with understanding. You survived it, and now it's time to move on. Breakfast appears much like dinner, simple, filling, and best not examined too closely. Bread, perhaps some leftover stew, and more ale, because water is still a gamble, and no one is feeling particularly adventurous. You return to the main room, and immediately recognize the pattern. Nothing has changed, and yet everything feels different. Morning light reveals details that the firelight kindly softened the night before. The tables, the walls, the floor, all exactly as they were, but now seen with a little more clarity than you might prefer. Still, there is food. You sit. Again. Because this is what you do. A bowl is placed in front of you. Familiar, reassuring, suspicious. The stew looks similar to last night. Perhaps identical. You choose not to investigate, because in this place continuity is comforting, even if you don't fully understand it. You take a bite, warm, still, reliable. The bread returns, just as firm, just as committed to its purpose. You nod slightly. Respect. You've done this before. You know how this works now. Dip, soften or adapt, and then the ale. Again, because water is an idea, ale is a solution. You drink, slowly, accepting it for what it is. Around you, others do the same. No one complains, no one questions. Because this is not about preference, it's about function. You eat, you drink, you prepare, because the day is already moving, and you are part of it now, whether you're ready or not. As the day begins, you realize the inn is more than just a place to sleep. It is a meeting point, a center of information, gossip and opportunity, where news travels faster than comfort and stories are traded as easily as coins. You begin to notice it. The conversations, different now, less about rest, more about movement, plans, destinations, opportunities. People are not just passing through, they're exchanging information. News from distant towns, rumors of roads, of markets, of places worth going or avoiding. You listen, because listening costs nothing, and here, knowledge has value. A traveller speaks of weather ahead. Another mentions a road that is no longer safe. Someone else shares a story about a market overflowing with goods. You don't know if it's true. It doesn't matter, because truth here is flexible. Useful information is what matters. You realize something slowly. This inn is not just a place to rest. It is a crossroads, a point where paths intersect briefly before continuing outward again. You are part of that, even if only for a moment. You could speak, share something, add to the flow, or you could remain quiet, absorb, learn. Both have value. You choose silence, for now, because there is more to gain in listening, and in this place. Every story carries a piece of the world with it. You observe the variety of people passing through, merchants with goods, travellers with stories, and individuals whose purposes are less clear but equally interesting. Each brings a piece of the wider world into this small, smoky space. You take a moment just to watch, because now that you're no longer focused on surviving the night, you can see them, really see them. A merchant sits near the window, carefully checking the contents of a small pouch, his movements precise, deliberate. Every item matters. Every coin has a purpose. Nearby, a traveller speaks quietly to another, their voices low, their conversation private in a room that offers no privacy at all. You notice the differences: clothing, posture, the way people carry themselves. Some move with confidence, others with caution. Some belong everywhere, others nowhere. And then there are those you can't quite place. They don't speak much, they observe, like you. You wonder about them. their stories, their reasons. But in this world, not every question has an answer, and not every answer is meant to be known. You sit back slightly, taking it all in. Because this is the inn, not just a building, but a collection of lives, intersecting briefly, then moving on. And for this short moment, you are part of that intersection, a quiet observer, in a place where everyone is going somewhere, even if they don't say where. Every interaction in the inn revolves around exchange, whether it is coins for food, stories for attention, or simply presents for warmth. It is a place where survival is a shared effort, even if it is not always a graceful one. You begin to notice the rhythm beneath everything. Not the noise, not the movement, but the exchange. Coins pass from hand to hand, quickly, quietly, almost without acknowledgement. A meal appears, a mug is filled, a place is secured. Everything here has a cost, even the things that don't seem like they should. A seat at the table, a bit of space near the fire, a moment of someone's time. You watch as two travellers lean closer, one offering a story in exchange for attention, the other listening not out of kindness. But because information is valuable, stories are currency. Just like coin, you see it in the way people speak, measured, purposeful. Even casual conversation carries weight, because anything useful, news, warnings, opportunities can be traded. And then there's presence, simply being here, sharing warmth, sharing space. That too has value, unspoken, unwritten, but understood. You shift slightly, make room for someone else. They nod, a silent acknowledgement, an exchange without words. You gave space, they give respect. This is how it works. Nothing is wasted, nothing is free, and yet it doesn't feel harsh. It feels necessary. Because in a world where survival is not guaranteed, everything becomes part of the system. Even you're part of it now. Your coins, your presence, your silence, your attention, all of it contributes. All of it matters. And as you sit there, quietly participating in this delicate, unspoken economy, you realize something simple. This place works, not because it is perfect, but because everyone understands the rules, even if no one ever says them out loud. Throughout it all, the innkeeper remains a steady presence, managing the chaos with practiced ease, balancing generosity with practicality, and ensuring that the inn continues to function despite everything working against it. You glance toward the counter again, and there they are, exactly where they've always been, not still, but steady. While everything else shifts, voices rising, people moving, small disruptions appearing and fading, the innkeeper remains consistent. They move when needed, speak when necessary, act without hesitation. You watch them handle a disagreement. Two travellers speaking a little too loudly, their tones sharp, their gestures growing wider. The innkeeper steps in, not aggressively, not dramatically, just present. A few words, quiet, firm. The tension dissolves, not completely, but enough. The conversation changes. The room settles, balance restored. You realize something important. This place runs because they allow it to. Every interaction passes through them in some way. Food, drink, space, information, even conflict. All of it is observed, managed, contained. You notice how they remember things. Who paid, who didn't, who might, who won't. Nothing escapes them. Not because they are watching closely, but because they've done this for so long they don't need to. It's instinct now. You see them exchange a look with a regular, a subtle nod, a shared understanding, no words needed. You understand this is more than a job, this is control, quiet control, the kind that doesn't demand attention but holds everything together. You take a moment, watch them a little longer, because without them, This place would fall apart, and not slowly and immediately. And somehow, that makes you feel safer. Knowing that in the middle of all this unpredictability, there is at least one thing that remains exactly where it should be. Eventually it is time to leave, and you step back out into the daylight, carrying with you the memory of a night that felt longer than it should have been. The fresh air feels like a reward, and the ground beneath your feet seems unexpectedly reliable. You gather your things, not many, just enough, because you didn't arrive with much and you're not leaving with more. You take one last look around. The room is still active, still alive, as if your entire experience here was just one small moment in something much larger, which it was. No one stops you. No one asks you to stay, because that's not how this works. People arrive, people leave, the inn continues. You move toward the door, push it open, and step outside, and the air hits you first, fresh, cool, clean. You take a deeper breath than you have all night, and immediately feel the difference. The space, the quiet, the absence of everything you just experienced. You stand there for a moment, letting it settle, because leaving feels significant, more than it should. You look back, just once. The sign still swings gently. The building still leans. Nothing has changed. And yet, you have. You turn away. Because there is nothing left to do here. No reason to linger. No benefit in returning. You begin to walk. And with each step, the inn becomes smaller behind you. Less present. Less immediate. Until it is just a memory. One you will not forget, but one you're very happy to leave behind. As you walk away, you begin to process the experience, realizing that a medieval inn was not just a place to rest, but a reflection of the world itself, messy, crowded, unpredictable, and somehow still functioning. You walk slowly, not because you're tired, but because your mind is full, replaying moments, small ones, the stew, the noise, the closeness, the constant awareness. You think about how everything worked, not perfectly, not comfortably, but effectively. People ate, people rested, people moved on. Despite everything, you consider the differences, your world, this world, the things you expect, the things they accept, and somewhere in that comparison, you find something unexpected, respect. Because this was not easy. None of it was. And yet, they did it. Every day, every night, without hesitation, without complaint. Because this was not unusual. This was life. You step over uneven ground. Notice how steady it feels, how simple, how reliable, and for a moment, you appreciate it, more than you normally would, because now you know the alternative. You continue walking, thinking less now, feeling more, because some lessons aren't meant to be analysed, they're meant to be experienced, and this one will stay with you. And as odd as it sounds, there is a certain comfort in knowing that people manage this life every day. That within the noise, the smells, and the shared spaces there was a kind of resilience, a quiet acceptance of things as they were. You slow your pace, just slightly, because now that you've left, something unexpected settles in. Not relief, not entirely, but something softer, a kind of understanding. You think about the people inside, still there, still moving through their routines, unbothered by what you found overwhelming, because to them, it isn't. It's normal, and there's something strangely reassuring about that. The idea that humans can adapt, adjust, accept, find comfort in places that seem impossible at first. You consider it. The noise, the lack of space, the uncertainty, all of it. And yet, they sleep, they eat, they live. You take another breath. the air still feels cleaner, but now it feels different. Less like an escape, more like a contrast. You understand something quietly. Comfort is relative. What feels unbearable at first becomes manageable, then familiar, then normal. You walk on, a little more aware, a little more appreciative. Because even though you would never choose that life, you can see how they did. And somehow, that makes the world feel a little more understandable. Even as you return to your modern world, the memory of the inn lingers, not as something you would willingly repeat, but as something strangely fascinating, a glimpse into a life that was both harder and, in its own way, deeply human. Time passes, distance grows, but the memory stays, not sharp and not overwhelming, just present. You recall small things, details, the way the fire moved, the sound of the room at night, the feeling of being surrounded by people you didn't know and didn't need to. You think about how different it all was, and yet how familiar it felt in certain moments, because at its core, it was simple. People needed rest, food, warmth, connection, and they found it in whatever way they could. You realize something. The discomfort fades first. The sharp edges of the experience soften. What remains is the structure, the understanding, the sense of how life worked. You continue forward, carrying it with you, not as a burden, but as a perspective, a reminder that life has always been like this, in different ways, in different forms, but always human. And now, the fire's dimmed, the voices have faded, and the doors of the inn have finally closed behind you. You made it. You survived a full day and night inside a medieval inn. Where the beds were shared, the stew was a mystery, and the concept of personal space was more of a philosophical idea than a reality. And yet, people lived like this. Not once, not occasionally, but every single day. So tonight, as you lie there in your own bed, clean sheets, soft pillows, a room that belongs entirely to you, you might notice something different. The quiet, the stillness, the luxury of knowing exactly what's in your food, and more importantly, what's not in your bed. Because not so long ago, sleep meant negotiation, comfort meant compromise, and rest was something you earned, one interruption at a time, and still, somehow, they endured. They adapted. They laughed in noisy rooms, shared warmth with strangers, and found ways to rest in places that never truly slept. History is full of grand empires, great battles and powerful kings, but it's also full of ordinary nights like this, crowded, uncomfortable, a little chaotic, and deeply human. So maybe tonight, as you drift off, you can carry that with you, a quiet appreciation for the silence, for the space, for the simple, extraordinary comfort of being alone in your own bed. Because history may be messy, loud, and occasionally crawling with things you'd rather not name. But it's also a reminder that people have always found a way to rest, to continue, to wake up and do it all again. And now, there's nothing left to do, nowhere else to be, just the quiet, the stillness, and the soft, steady rhythm of sleep. Good night.